My name is Tobias Seger. I am Swiss. I am formerly a student at the University of Edinburgh and am now an associate in the litigation team at CMS.
Thank you. And why did you choose University of Edinburgh for your degree? And why law?
That's a very good question. So, starting with the first one first, I really wanted to study in English. So, I had spent a bit of the time in the States before I moved to Scotland, where I learned kind of like more than the basic school English. I want to continue that, and Edinburgh was an excellent opportunity to do that. And law, I'm going to be honest, I didn't really know at the time. So when I was in high school, I went to my college counselor and said I would very much like to earn money by talking. And they said to me, I have two options, journalism or law. And I thought, maybe law sounds a bit better. So I went for that. But I must admit, I was very nervous when I first came to Edinburgh because I didn't want to call my parents after 6 months and say, I'm really sorry, mom and dad, I want to go home. I don't enjoy this. So
Yeah.
luckily for me, I fell in love with the subject and have loved it ever since.
Mhm. And could you tell us a bit about your career path and what led you to join CMS for now?
Yes, of course. So I did my undergrad and my diploma both at the University of Edinburgh. In the middle of it, I also did a master's by research at Edinburgh. I did the vacation scheme in my fourth year. So I'm the living example that you don't need to get a vac scheme in your third year. It's still all fine if you do it in your fourth. And after doing the vacation scheme at CMS, I got off the training contract, which I then started 2 years later. Um, why CMS is a very good question. So, having an international background myself, I wanted to join an international firm, and obviously, CMS is one of the largest firms in the world and certainly in Europe. They had a Zurich office, which for me as a Swiss person was a perk. But I think for me, the most important factor was that when I was still a student, we had those in-person law fairs. So you got to meet all the different Scottish law firms. And literally from the first experience I had with CMS, everybody was unbelievably friendly, very approachable, very nice. And for me, that has held true throughout my entire career. And you spend an awful lot of time at work once you qualify. So I'd rather be somewhere with nice people.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And how would you describe your current focus at CMS? What sort of things are you working on? How has it developed over your time at the company?
Yes, so I am now a litigation associate. When I did my training contract, I started in the insurance litigation team. I then moved over to do 6 months in the non-contentious construction team, 6 months in competition, and then 6 months in the property litigation team, because at that stage I already knew I wanted to become a litigator. And I've been in the litigation team ever since. I have kind of two focuses. If we look at the broader picture, I mainly deal with professional negligence claims. So professional negligent architects, engineers, sometimes lawyers. But in the last few years, my main focus has been on class actions. As you may know, in 2018, Scotland introduced the new group actions procedure, and CMS has been at the forefront of that. So I've been mainly involved with class actions.
Nice. And are there any aspects of your role which you find most rewarding or most interesting for you?
Yes, I confess I'm a legal geek. So the geek here, I get to be the happier I am. So coming up with really creative legal arguments. I think one thing I really enjoy about CMS is that we usually are right at the cutting edge of the law. So it's relatively rare that one of my cases has like a predetermined answer. So you get to sit down, think about it, and I think it's very satisfying if after many hours of head scratching, you suddenly go, aha, we could try this. I also really enjoy working with witnesses. I find the interpersonal exchange really interesting. I like this idea of, looking at the facts of the case first, then learning more about the case from the witness itself. So those are two things I enjoy in particular.
Thank you.
Interesting. And for students who are interested in pursuing legal career, particularly in your field, what would be your main advice?
That's a very good question, a very broad question. I think the most important thing is that I think having a passion for what you do is really important. And I think if you are passionate about law, you should definitely pursue a career in law. And as you both know, as students, both the degree is hard and all the internship stuff and the vac schemes and getting a training contract is also difficult. So it makes it all a bit easier when you do something you actually enjoy. And I think the other point is that especially in Scotland, the legal field is very, very small. And I think being kind and friendly to people has never hurt anyone, even in litigation. I think it's always important to be polite and accommodating to your position. And I think being an open-minded and kind person will always put you well in your career. And I think otherwise, in your studies, finding the right balance between taking obviously your studies seriously because grades matter, but at the same time not leaving the socializing out entirely, I think is a good balance to strike.
Yeah.
And how would you say emerging technologies like AI in particular changing the legal industry?
That's a really good question. I will confess, I'm probably one of the people who is a bit more skeptical about AI than other people are. I can see definitely uses for it in document review. I've seen very impressive use where essentially, maybe taking a step back, one of the work and litigation that takes the most time is disclosure or specification documents in Scotland, where you get tens, sometimes 100,000 documents, you need to review them for relevancy. And here I've seen some really impressive AI that's able to cut right down to the core, who's able to give me, what they think the relevant documents are and move from there. I think that's a very, very efficient use of resource and time. When it comes to the whole ChatGPT, Harvey kind of stuff, I am sure it will become important. I have no doubt about that. These things are getting better almost on a monthly basis. But right now, I would say it's a bit like having practical law, but you can be less sure that the answer is right. So at the moment, I would prefer looking it up myself than using ChatGPT. But what it is useful for is things like summaries. So for instance, you get a new Supreme Court case, it's 80 pages long. You want to read it for yourself, but the client wants a quick 2-pager. It's useful for that. But I don't think it will replace lawyers, at least not in the short term. And I think it might have slightly less impact on the industry, at least in the short term, than other people might have thought.
Very interesting. And what would you say was the proudest moment in your career so far?
Ooh, um, there is one funny story where, so when I was in my very first seat, I got to do my very first proof. Obviously, being a trainee, I sat in the back row, but nevertheless, I was there. And there was one particularly aspect of fact that I was able to contribute on. And when senior counsel made their final submission, they were so kind as to actually mention me by name, saying that I had done the underlying research, and I was on cloud 7. And my supervising solicitor leaned over to me and said, "Well, you better be right now." So I was immediately returned from cloud 7, being a bit more stressed, but I've done my analysis correctly. But no, that was a very proud moment. I think any work you do, especially litigation, that then gets used in court feels really good because a lot of work goes on in the background until you are finally there, and seeing it all play out, maybe having predicted an argument or spotted something in the opposition side, that these are always good moments.
What do you think the main differences are between in-house legal work and private practice, and what's drawn you more to stay with private practice?
Oh, wow, that's another really good question. I think obviously I don't have any experience in-house myself. I have only interacted with in-house lawyers. I think by and large, they seem to have a much more business-focused approach. They understand their business very well. They know exactly what the business wants to achieve. And legal in-house is, on the one hand, an enabler for the business, but on the other hand, also kind of like a sense check to make sure that, no unnecessary risks are being taken. So I think if you're going in-house, you're probably even more commercially aware than the usual solicitor. You probably have a bit of a broader practice. There's less specialism in there. And certainly when you go in litigation, you probably prefer a slightly more hands-off approach. And I don't mean this in a negative way. It's just that usually litigation is something that's more likely to be outsourced than insourced. I think if you compare it to private practice, I think the benefit of private practice is that you get to be more specialized. And some people enjoy that, some people don't. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer there whatsoever. But what attracted me to private practice is that I get to be a bit more specialized. I get to be a bit more in court. And I think one thing that people have mentioned to me who have gone in-house or gone to combat in-house is that private practice can feel a bit safer because you're usually in a large firm with larger groups. Like even if you go to a high street firm, you'll have probably more solicitors around you than you would have an in-house, and that creates a safety net. And I think some people appreciate that.
Yeah. When you were at university, was there any specific sectors within commercial law that you really wanted to go into, or was it more just a general commercial law is what you were interested in?
When I was in university, I knew very early on that I wanted to become a litigator. I remember that everyone told me throughout my uni career and when I was a trainee, like, oh, you don't know what you're gonna like until you've actually done it. And I was like, no, 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 I know I really like litigation. Um, I think there's a bit of truth in both. I would always recommend people to do a contentious and a non-contentious seat. Aside from that, I'm a massive EU law geek. So I really enjoyed EU law in uni. I'm still doing quite a bit of EU law now that I'm in practice. It's kind of like my niche, so I really enjoy that. But all in all, I've genuinely had a fantastic time at Edinburgh. So I've enjoyed almost every subject. I think the one that possibly I wasn't so brilliant at was family law, and thankfully I've managed to keep that far away from my
Yeah.
practice.
That's very interesting. And are there any books or podcasts you would recommend? It might be something career or non-career related. Maybe there are some books or podcasts that you find inspirational or motivational.
Ooh, other good question. So I think if you want to do litigation and litigation is your thing, there's a lecture from I think it's about the 80s called The 10 Commandments of Cross-Examination. It's free on YouTube. If you Google it, you'll find it. And it's by an American judge who, in my view, does in a very, very engaging manner explains how to best do cross-examination. And I think that's not just helpful for if you want to be a litigator, but also how to think about a case or a legal problem in general. So I really enjoy that. Otherwise, can't think of anything right now, which probably says more about me than I'd like to admit. But yeah, no, sorry.
Thank you very much. And the last question for today is, what advice would you give to your younger self?
I think I was pretty happy how it all turned out. I think I would just say keep going how you're going. I think when I first went to uni, it was really exciting to go to a new country because I think when you go far away from home, you kind of have a chance like a second try. All the stuff that you've done before kind of can go again. And I think that has allowed me to build some confidence or try new things out. And I think that is definitely what I would recommend to anyone who starts university is that it's a really great time to try various things out. Even if you're set in a career in commercial law, the law firms, at least as far as I'm aware, don't particularly care what courses you take. So if you want to spend 6 months doing advanced criminal law, do it. If you want to if you want to take one course a bit out there, definitely do it because I think it's as much freedom as you'll get. And the further you get on your career, the more you'll be kind of like restricted into somewhere. So I definitely enjoyed both in my undergrad and on diploma to take courses and stuff that I just found interesting. And I think that's the advice I would give.